Good afternoon from New York City and welcome to Society in Transition, a transatlantic conversation on Black Lives Matter. We will now hand over to our distinguished speakers, which is Dr. Silke Hakkenisch, who is an Americanist and Associate Professor at the Institute for North American History at the University of Cologne, and Dr. Tiffany Flaville, who is a Germanist and Associate Professor of the 20th Century European Women's and Gender History at the University of New Mexico.
The thought of working together with Silke was not was exciting again. I enjoyed collaborating with her, but I also thought it would be an enriching process and practice for my students. So the thought of having students collaborate with students at the University of Cologne was very appealing to me, especially given that we are in a pandemic and that kind of mobility and travel is not feasible for many of my students.
And I think what's really interesting is that my students are at a German higher education institution, but study the United States, whereas Tiffany's students are based in the United States, but basically study Europe and Germany. And we are hoping that this lends itself to really fruitful and productive exchanges.
So I think it's important to show students that Blackness, sort of Black communities have faced difficulties across the globe. There are persistent efforts to push for rights, for recognition, for citizenship, for carving out spaces for themselves in a variety of ways, resisting as well as surviving sort of very sort of dire circumstances. And so I think the class really tries to acknowledge this longer history. And so I think we're aware of sort of civil rights activism, Black Panther activism, but I think some of my students are not aware of similar movements occurring in Europe in the 1960s and thinking about civil rights activism on the continent of Europe and what that looked like. So Black Lives Matter, yes, began in the US. It certainly has significance and tied to a key moment, thinking about sort of the killing of Trayvon Martin. But it also has such global reverberations and how communities across the globe see it as a way of articulating their own demands against racism, against the erasures of sort of colonialism and the colonial legacies, and not acknowledging that. So I think what we see in terms of this global, echoing of what Black Lives Matter across the world is really a key symbol of how these communities are agitating for change in a variety of ways and using this moment as a way of articulating demands that many of them have been making for years. So this is not a new movement for many, but this has a new sort of new stage or a new presence, given the killing of George Floyd last year. My class has already started, and Silke's class will be starting soon. And so my students are very eager to connect with students from the University of Cologne. Some of them have also expressed a little trepidation. They're like, I'm nervous. And I think that's perfectly normal. Silke and I have, coordinated our syllabi. We've also coordinated, we're doing one group project together in which both of our classes are going to be paired in groups to develop a project related to themes about sort of Black Lives Matter. So it could be Black lives in the US, Black lives in Europe, gender and sexuality, lynching. So we have the Carceal State, we have a variety of themes that students can pick, and then we match them up with a student I will match them up with a student in Cologne, Silke will match her students up with a student in New Mexico, and the students will have to work together to come up with a creative project that will then be placed on our website.
So yeah, I think what Tiffany so eloquently elaborated on is that we really envision Black Lives Matter not as a US-centered movement, but as a global human rights movement, that this is really a human rights movement that attends to political rights, to social rights, to civil rights, also a movement that is very intersectional in its nature and has similarities, but also differences to what is conventionally considered the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s. Our aim is really to to combine these various debates happening across the Atlantic, and also to give our students an opportunity to think about what they're studying from a variety of perspectives.
We'll have some classes where we connect. The time difference certainly will work against us, but I mean, this is why I enjoy collaboration. It really requires negotiation and a willingness to compromise. And so I think this is key for any collaborative effort. And so I'm looking forward to our students getting these enriching experiences within their homes. I mean, we're sort of so stationary and mobile, we're basically immobilized, that I think it's really interesting that our students are still getting these transatlantic experiences and narratives in their home without sort of going to Europe or coming to the US per se.
Yeah, and just to briefly add to that, I think this is also something I would like to carry on in a post-pandemic world, to still have these sort of virtual exchanges, because it also gives students a possibility to engage with other students who wouldn't necessarily be able to go abroad for a variety of reasons, financial strains, care responsibilities or whatever. So, but this format gives us a chance to engage with each other, gives the students a chance to meet students they wouldn't normally meet. And I think this can be really productive when we give them a set of topics that can be approached from a US history perspective, but also European history perspective, especially with processes of racializations and racial formations that are very different in Europe and the United States. And this idea to be German means to be white, and to have this deconstructed, I think is really important for the students, and one of the gains of the seminar. And to look at these manifestations of racism, but also manifestations of resilience and resistance across the Atlantic, and thereby also pay attention to individuals who have crossed the Atlantic many times and have made a career in different spaces.